WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. JEA customers will see their bills rise starting in December because of the rising cost of natural gas. Right now, the average monthly JEA bill is about $123. That will increase to nearly $130 under the fuel fee increase, which the JEA board unanimously approved this week. JEA Executive Julie Crawford says the charge will increase and decrease along with changing fuel costs from month to month.
We would limit the month-over-month increase in that fuel charge to no more than 20%. And if our fuel expenses exceed what we recover, we have the authority to then recover that over a period of time.
In recent months, skyrocketing natural gas prices have chipped away at JEA's reserves, which the utility expects to be depleted by December. Natural gas, a fossil fuel that contributes to climate change, accounted for about 63% of JEA's energy mix last year, and the city-owned utility plans to use about the same amount over the next year or so. However, the utility is working on a plan that could see renewable energy like solar power make up a bigger share of what powers our homes and businesses. Florida's top financial officer wants state lawmakers to allocate $10 million for Florida's urban search and rescue task forces. The state's chief financial officer, Jimmy Petronas, says the additional funding for urban search and rescue, USAR, would pay for new vehicles, equipment, and training for disasters. Many of the personnel combing through the rubble of the collapsed Champlain Towers condos in Miami Beach earlier this year were part of USAR. And it's 64 degrees now in Jacksonville. We have a cloudy sky, a high near 74 this afternoon.
JEA says your electric bills are going up. City Council makes Juneteenth an official local holiday. And it's Florida Georgia weekend. Some of the stories making headlines this week. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, all of the top stories of the week with our Friday Roundtable. Listen right now on the radio or watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube, and later on demand at PBS Jax Passport. Then later, our brand new venture, Jax Today, is growing fast. We'll tell you how you can subscribe and be part of it. It's free. But first, it's Friday, and here to discuss a busy week in the news, we welcome A.G. Gankarski of Florida Politics. Hey, A.G.
Good morning, Melissa.
Good to be with you. Tim Gibbons, editor of the Jacksonville Business Journal. Hi, Tim.
Good morning.
Catherine Lewin, reporter with the Florida Times-Union. Catherine, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And rounding out our fabulous foursome, regular WJCT contributor, the great Fred Matthews. Hi, Fred.
Good morning, Melissa.
So good to see all of you on the video stream. As I mentioned, listen on the radio or follow along on video and join us because there's lots to talk about this week. We'll go to your calls in a moment at 549-2937. But we're going to begin with our top story. Starting December 1st, Duval County residents will see a hike in their electric bills due to increasing prices of natural gas. That powers JEA's electric generating stations. According to a report from our news partners at the TU, a residential customer who uses 1,000 kilowatts a month currently pays about $108 in their bill. After the price increase, the average customer could pay about $114 for the same electric usage. Here's JEA Executive Julie Crawford talking about fluctuations in the bills we can expect.
We would limit the month-over-month increase in that fuel charge to no more than 20%. And if our fuel expenses exceed what we recover, we have the authority to then recover that over a period of time.
Okay, we begin the hour with a closer look at rising electric and utility bills. Not just JEA, Florida Power and Light has also indicated its rates are going up. All of this comes just as oil executives were grilled yesterday in front of Congress about allegedly misleading the public for decades about the effect on fossil fuel emissions and how that's contributing to climate change. Today is 24 hours of climate reality, a global day of action around the world, urging the rapid decarbonization of this planet. And of course, a big climate conference is coming up in Glasgow, Scotland in November. 5492937. Before we get into the bigger issues, A.G. Gankarski, this isn't any news that JEA customers want to hear, or those who get their power from Florida Power and Light. This is the reality, though, for millions of Florida residents around the state.
Yeah, I mean, this is the future of utilities and of so much more. I mean, JEA is going to basically smooth the increase. So if you see these spikes during the winter, as some are forecasting, you won't feel the spike immediately, but you're going to be paying for the spike for a long time to come. And, this is a measure of declining currency. This is a measure of, changes in oil and natural gas policy. The Trump policy was very aggressive in terms of exploration and drilling. The Biden policy is more cognizant of the climate change impacts. And, the whole convergence of this is really tough for people who are trying to put together budgets because it's not just electricity is going up, it's everything else also, gas and, the price of things. And, really isn't this all on the American dollar as reserve currency? I mean, we're seeing what's happening in the crypto market. These are valuations relative to the dollar. And what that is saying is there's a significant amount of capital out there saying the U.S. dollar is a bad bet. The issue is, other currencies are in the same boat. Historically, when this happens in the world, it is solved militarily. Hopefully it won't come to that. But we have a lot of worthless fiat currencies out there. And when it comes time to pay for things like electricity, we're feeling the bite.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a more high-level analysis of the global picture, and I appreciate that. Tim Gibbons, editor of the Jacksonville Business Journal. It's not a huge increase for the average customer, but it's one they'll feel, and it's one that will upset them, and it's indicative of these kinds of pain points AG just brought up.
It is, and it's a challenge. The entire energy market is going through changes, as you have on a global scale, companies trying to transition to more renewables because they feel customers want that, investors want that. There's a rising increase in people investing in green energy sort of projects. Part of the problem of that is if you're not investing in oil and gas exploration, that means there's less of it, and that drives the price up. So there is a transition. It kind of feels like anybody who lived through Apple getting rid of USB ports on their computers or getting rid of disk drives, where you end up with, okay, what's the new thing? Well, I don't have a USB thumb drive yet, but I can't use my old CD.
Right.
That's kind of the switch that we feel like. It's going to be a somewhat painful transition, but JEA does need to make sure its finances are stabilized. We don't want to go through a repeat of the debacle with JEA trying to get too creative and let's do a whole bunch of wacky stuff, including selling the utility to keep its finances stable. Increase might be a smaller price to pay.
Right. We all saw how that worked out, not so well. Let us know your thoughts about the energy picture and your bills going up with JEA and Florida Power and Light, 5492937. And as I mentioned, Catherine Lewin, today is 24 hours of climate reality, a global day of action. Activists, including here in our area, who we spoke with on the show yesterday and around the world, are mobilizing to try to raise awareness and pressure governments worldwide to get serious about reducing carbon emissions. The big worldwide goal is to get to net zero carbon by the year 2050 to stave off the worst impacts of climate change. That's a big issue here in Florida, in this coastal state. There's a big climate conference, UN climate conference, coming up in Glasgow, Scotland next week, which has been billed as, the world's last best chance to actually take some meaningful action on this. So, Catherine, that's the big picture.
Yeah, and I mean, nothing excites me less than another conference
Right.
on such an important issue as climate change. I feel like often all we do is have conferences. But still, I'm glad there's a conversation. It's better than no conversation. And I think worrying about the climate and climate change is something that, as Floridians especially, we need to worry about and think about. I'm born and raised in Florida, and I have absolutely noticed significant changes throughout my even just my 28 years living in Florida, the climate has changed a lot in Central Florida, where I grew up, as well as on the coast. And so I hope something comes of all of the actions as well as the conference. It's really, really important.
That's right. Let me take a moment to brag about our Adapt digital magazine, adaptflorida.org, where we cover the challenges to Florida and how the state is facing a huge adaptation and mitigation problem in the coming years. Because Fred Matthews, you've lived in Florida a long time. The state's getting hotter. We're seeing more intense hurricanes and storms. We're seeing more inland flooding. We certainly saw that with Hurricane Irma in downtown Jacksonville. We're seeing more erosion. We're going to see more and more of these impacts in Florida. We are really seen, Fred, as the most vulnerable state in the country to these impacts.
And we've been blessed over the last month that we have not seen what has happened on the West Coast, and certainly what has happened in the Northeast in their areas with the weather that we have. It's been relatively calm here, but it is almost a calm before the storm. The winds and rain that came in over the last day and a half is sort of a harbinger of what could be coming up. It has been quite warmer. I mean, we're sitting in October and we're still sitting at roughly 65 to 70 degrees. It is still much warmer than it should be as we move into winter, less than a month away. It is a different feel for winter, for fall this year. And folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but for those of us who spend a great deal of time outside, it is a different feel this year than it has been in the past because of what's happening globally. And we can see that all around. And of course, just touching back on the issue with JEA, it was expected. Thankfully, it's not going to be as painful a rise in the electric bill as it could be. It is a good reason, of course, to be on the budget plan as I'm on, and I think a lot of people should be on, because at least you know what your bill is going to be every month, regardless of highs or lows.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on that same plan, by the way. We are at our house. 549-2937. Give us a call. Anthony in St. Augustine. Hi, Anthony. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you are participating in the FPL solar plan, if that will ameliorate some of the increase due to the gas prices, since supposedly the power is coming from solar and not dependent on gas. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anthony. A.G. Genkarski, let's talk about solar power in Florida. Theoretically, you would think every roof in the state would have a solar panels on it, given that we are the Sunshine State. Vested interests, critics say the major utilities have prevented that, have made it harder for people to get solar. The utilities say they're investing heavily in solar and other renewables. What about this?
Yeah, I mean, there are solar farms and there are initiatives at the utility level, but I mean, holistically, over the years and decades, consumer level solar has been discouraged or squashed, depending on how you want to look at it, by the utilities. And we're kind of in the pay the piper moment now. We sort of floated through the first part of the century, using a 20th century mindset. Would always be there. There would always be this unlimited source of whatever it was we needed. It's not the case anymore. And what's going to be happening now is a diversification. You'll see more open advocacy of nuclear and other things. I don't think we'll get back to the reintroduction of coal, but there's always going to be people talking about clean coal too as a solution.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a grab bag, but basically, the failure to prepare by the industry has created a crisis for consumers that solar could have helped to avoid.
On Facebook, Mike says, as more JEA customers go solar, JEA loses money and has to raise prices. With the federal tax credit now available, hopefully more homeowners will go solar themselves. Meredith in Jacksonville. Hi, Meredith. Hi, Meredith. You're on the air.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question is, does Jacksonville have a solar panel? If not, why don't we?
I'm sorry, you cut out there. What did you ask?
Does Jacksonville have a solar panel farm?
Yeah.
And why don't we if we don't?
Thank you, Meredith. Yeah, JEA is developing those. Tim Gibbons.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear a question. But
Does Jacksonville have a solar panel farm?
Oh, yes, it does, and it's working on others. I mean, the utility has definitely made efforts to move into renewables. I think the question across the industry is, did they wait too long to move into that? But yeah, the electric bill that all of us get, part of what we're paying for is solar. What AG was referring to is the idea that rooftop solar, consumer solar, has been a fraught issue, where the utility has somewhat pushed back on the idea of people going to net zero and just putting their own solar panels there. The issue becomes that transmission lines and all of the other infrastructure that JEA needs has to be paid for in some way.
Yeah.
So it becomes a challenge.
And they changed their net metering policy, which is a bit complicated, but it basically, for those who don't understand this or haven't followed it closely, it makes it more difficult for the average person to go solar. Tom on Facebook, JEA also needs to recoup from their disastrous investment in the Georgia nuclear plant. That is also a factor, Tom. Thank you for that. 549-2937. Carnell on the north side. Carnell, how are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Go ahead.
Look, I just have two questions. My first question is, as JEA is trying to develop a strategic plan focused on renewable energy, are they going to be targeting some of our lower and less economic communities? And number two, how do they plan on expanding charging level 3 stations throughout our community? Because as I look at the Build Back Better plan and also the bipartisan infrastructure plan, there's a strategic approach to try to get people to switch from gas guzzlers to electric vehicles. But the thing about it is that I just want to get a better understanding is that will the lowest amount of people in our community, will they be able to benefit from what's been put forth by Congress?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Thanks, Carnell. Catherine Lewin, Florida Times Union, the Build Back Better plan, which we are hearing may soon pass in Washington after months of wrangling. One of the big pieces of it deals with climate change, giving incentives to people to make it easier for them to buy electric cars, putting electric charging stations in far more locations than what we have now, and other changes. Theoretically, this would help lower income Americans plug into a new energy economy in a way that they can't now. Catherine.
Yeah, I think electric cars, solar panels, things like that, any changes we make on a societal and countrywide level, I think could be good, especially if we get help from the government to do it. In terms of Florida, I'm not convinced that would have make a real positive impact on the state. I think Florida politicians and the Army Corps of Engineers have spent a lot of years altering Florida's natural protections from climate change, like the Everglades and coastal swamps and marshes, and trees and natural dunes and things like that. So I think any way we can lower carbon emissions is great, but in terms of what that will mean for our lives in Florida in the future, I'm not convinced it'll make that much of a difference, to be honest. I think we'd have to make some other really big changes in the state.
Thea in Jacksonville Beach. Hi, Thea. Thanks for your call.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering if there was any inclination about JEA ever switching their net metering policy to allow net metering.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Fred, thank you for that call. Thea, Fred Matthews, that has been a sore point on the part of local solar advocates who wanted to try to force JEA to restore its net metering policy. They basically lost in court over that.
They lost in court and they lost in the legislature because it was full court press. As many of us may recall, about 2 years ago, when the JEA and FPL and others got serious about the coming of local ownership of solar panels. And they basically got in and got in the market and cornered it, and now they're willing to install solar panels for you at your home at JEA's expense, so that they can be the beneficiaries of whatever bill you're going to pay, however small it's going to be. But of course, we all know that the other side of that is that you pay a great deal of money on the upside to get it. The problem also, of course, for the anything concerning solar panels and that sort of thing for low-income residents is that many of them don't own homes. And as a result of not owning your home, you don't have the advantage, you don't get the tax advantage that you would get for getting getting solar panels installed. You don't get the advantage that so that you can eventually reap the financial advantages of a lower electric bill. So those on the lower end of the scale, non-homeowners, are still not going to be benefiting from this for quite some time unless their landlords, for whatever reason, decide that they are going to install some type of solar paneling on home ownership. So it's going to be a long time for folks on the lower end of the realm. They're just not going to see it. They're going to still be beholden to the local utility company.
Thanks for that. And if you're just tuning in, it's our Friday Media Roundtable, live on the radio and live video you can watch on Facebook and YouTube. With A.G. Gankarski, Tim Gibbons, Catherine Lewis, and Fred Matthews, and myself, we're going to shift gears now and talk about some other news from the week. The number to join the show, 549-2937. A lot happened Tuesday night at the Jacksonville City Council. They debated late into the night over the confirmation of Jason Teal. He was confirmed as the city's top attorney via the Office of General Counsel. Now, the other two big talking points from the week. The infamous Confederate statue honoring the women of the Confederacy in Springfield Park. The city council has formed a committee to consider removing the statue. It will cost more than $1 million. They listened to dozens of speakers giving their points of view about this. The committee votes on November 9th. They also declared Juneteenth a local paid holiday. Juneteenth marks the official end of slavery in the United States. And so, A.G. Gankarski, the echoes of the Confederacy continue to reverberate in Jacksonville. Let's talk first about the statue, the Confederate statue in Springfield Park. The mayor has punted this over to the city council because it's a budget item. It will cost more than $1 million to take it down. Is there a supermajority of votes, 13 of 19 votes on the Jacksonville City Council, do you think, to remove this statue?
Based on my read of the council, I don't see 13 there. And maybe that's the point. I don't know. But it really is a situation where you can't say there's not money for it. I mean, we are awash in federal incentive money, and, that could be done. That's a rounding error in terms of the budget. But it's a very hard position to take. I mean, you've got, while you have a lot of people saying that the statue needs to be removed, the voices for keeping the statue where it is are very loud, very strident, and they seem to have a disproportionate effect on the people on city council. It just seems like they've responded to that kind of approach, that sort of right-wing hectoring historically over the years. So it'll be interesting to see what the final vote is on it. I mean, we know that Matt Carlucci, Reggie Gaffney, Jacoby Pittman supports a removal, and we can deduce there are others, but it's easy to find six no's in that batch too.
Tim Gibbons, if the Jacksonville City Council votes to keep this statue up, that will mean another rash of negative national publicity for Jacksonville, Florida, following on this recent piece that just ran in the New York Times explaining how frustrated people are that their trash can't get picked up here or that they can't recycle.
It has to be something that kills the economic development folks when, we're in a period where economic development people are trying to get people to come to Florida. 50 people a day move to Jacksonville, economy is booming, all of that sort of thing. And yet the national media is all, the things that are bubbling up are things that do not make people want to move to Jacksonville. This reminds me of the Human Rights Ordinance expansion, where talking to business owners then, the fear was that the expansion of the HRO would be killed, which becomes an issue of, if you don't even bring the issue up, then you're just a city who has a Confederate statute. You're just a city who hasn't expanded its HRO. If you vote it down, now you're on a much shorter list. And now you're on a list that does get written about in the national media and does give the city a black eye that while cities across the country were able to take statues down over the past couple of years, Jacksonville commits to having it. It's not really a good look.
No. Catherine Lewin, Florida Times-Union, of course, at the height of Black Lives Matter protests in the city last summer, when it was expected that the Republican National Convention was going to be held here in Jacksonville, Mayor Curry acted unilaterally to take down the Confederate statue in what used to be called Hemming Park. It was renamed James Weldon Johnson Park after probably the most esteemed person to ever come out of Jacksonville, a black man, James Weldon Johnson. So he was able to act unilaterally to take down that Confederate soldier in the park. This, though, is going to be a more tricky matter. There are politics involved, although, as AG pointed out, we can certainly afford to do this. The statue wouldn't be demolished. It would just be stored somewhere, right?
Right. I mean, this is something that we've seen, like it's been mentioned, happening all over the country, removing these statues of slaveholders and people who supported racism. And it's, a strong and popular movement. And we'll see what happens. I mean, it's $1 million. Like, it certainly is affordable, but just have to see if they do it.
Yeah, and Fred Matthews, this big statue in Springfield Park, that park, by the way, was also renamed from Confederate Park to Springfield Park. It's not the only monument or marker to the Confederacy in Jacksonville that's still left standing. It's just the biggest one still left.
It is. It's a big target, and that's, of course, why groups like the Northside Coalition and others taking down Jacks are targeting that. I tend to agree a bit with what AG has indicated about whether or not it will be down anytime soon. Look, the mayor's already given the council the high sign, as we all know, by removing the signs from Hemming Plaza. And of course, they found a place for it to go. Other cities have found the same thing, a place for these statues to go. The same thing will probably take place eventually with the situation with the statue in Springfield, but it's just, it's much more, it's larger, heavier, and is much more costlier. But if you want to, the tale of the tape is simple. If you want to slow something down or kill it, put it to committee.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here we have, again, we've got two black heads of the city council, president and vice president. Now, both of them are Republican. I won't hold that against them. But the fact of the matter is that they also know if they have 13 votes to get this done, we have the money to do it. So that's not the issue. What is the issue? The issue is just what's not being said about this. It's already been determined that we're going to get the statues down and put somewhere. It's just a question of where they're going, who's going to receive it, and that's what has to be worked out at this point. Who's going to take this statue and where are we going to put it? That's the problem.
Well, we'll follow the vote and the process, but there are some other headlines we want to get to. It's 5492937. I want to take a minute to talk, Catherine, about your story that ran this week in the Florida Times-Union about JSO and their LGBTQ plus liaison, liaising to the LGBT community, getting some positive reviews, but also some criticism. Let's go back to 2018 when 3 black trans women were killed in Jacksonville, and that also made unwanted national headlines. Pressure was placed on the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to better communicate with this population, and they created a liaison team. Bring us up to date on how that's going.
Right. Yeah, I decided to do a follow-up, 3 years later to what's happened to the liaison team since then. It's not known 100%. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office declined to do an interview or give me any additional information. But through some other reporting and interviewing some other people who are involved with pushing for the creation of the liaison team, there's definitely mixed reviews. I talked to Paige Mahogany Parks. She's a well-known trans activist here in Jacksonville, and she said she still feels like there's a target on her back, and that not much has changed. And she really wants to see the liaison team reach out to the transgender and the LGBTQ community more. And I mean, I think the good things that I've heard mentioned, Dan Merkin from the director of policy at Jasmine, he said since that liaison team was created, some of the volunteer officers on the team have been to different rallies and events. They were at the March Across the Bridge after the Acosta Bridge pride lights had been sort of quietly and unceremoniously turned off one night. And also there had been some internal changes in JSO, and all of that was happening in 2018. And those 3 women were killed. They received a lot of backlash for dead naming the victims.
Can you explain what that is for folks who don't understand that terminology?
Yeah, dead naming, calling a transgender person by a name that they don't want to be called by anymore, that does not, correlate to their gender identity. And so JSO got a lot of backlash for dead naming. And so according to Dan Merkin, there have been some internal changes in JSO. They are instructed or encouraged to ask people's pronouns if it's safe to do so when they're answering calls and out and about doing their duties. And now in police reports, after a first reference of someone's dead name, they then are instructed to use their that person's preferred name or their daily use name that correlates with their gender identity. And so those have been some of the I guess changes that have come about since then. But since that first town hall style meeting that Sheriff Williams had in August of 2018, there hasn't been any kind of interaction specifically, with the community around this issue. And so that's where a lot of other criticism came from, is that people in the community feel like the liaison team, people have forgotten it exists. It's not well advertised. They have an email that you can write to, but it's not well advertised. A lot of people did not know that this email existed. And I'm not even sure how many officers are still on this team since the sheriff's office declined to speak to me about it or give me any information. So we're not even sure how many officers there are on it since it's volunteer based. Yeah.
And I would encourage everyone to read the article. There's a lot to learn and ponder in this piece by Catherine A.G. Gankarski, whether it's JSO liaising with the LGBT community or whether it's taking down Confederate statues or a number of other things we could talk about. We are living through a time of casting the old order aside and remnants and vestiges of it and moving into a new cultural space. And with these changes come a lot of pain and a lot of dissension. But we're living through extraordinary times.
Yeah, and I think it's important to temper expectations regarding the extraordinary times, because the political space itself is a lagging indicator. Like Catherine just said about JSO, I mean, they're taking steps to try to remedy things that should have been remedied, years ago. And we see that on spear after spear locally. And, given the way redistricting is going to shape out, we're going to see the same sort of leadership structure in terms of Republican domination, older white people dominating, and it's going to be like that for another decade. So the political leadership that is coming up, the people running for new offices or the people being manufactured as new candidates, they need to be cognizant of the fact that right now the political class has lost its way, and they're going to have to go against their own demographics to try to figure out a way to create something that looks like representative democracy again.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Tim Gibbons, because, Duval County is sort of a microcosm of what we're seeing happen across the country, We're an increasingly young and diverse county and a more progressive county than days of yore. But as AG pointed out, the local ruling class is not in step with that new demographic mix. And that's going to lead to more tension. Who knows what issues will come up in the future. But we are seeing that play out locally and nationally.
When I mentioned a moment ago of economic developers, cheering on the idea that 50 people a day are moving to Jacksonville and companies are coming here and, look at all the growth. With that comes different cultures and different backgrounds and different things that you expect a city to do. I think it says something that the Jax Chamber and the Civic Council and those groups of business community leaders have oftentimes been a little more progressive than, our old style political leaders. Because if you are a CEO of a company and you want to hire people, you're going to be a little more to the left on social issues because your workforce is going to be. Now, that's where you see things like I was watching the Florida Chamber annual meeting yesterday, and Governor DeSantis was railing about woke capitalism. That's part of the backlash, the idea that as customers and as employees want their employers to do different things, there's going to be backlash to it. It will be interesting to see how that plays out in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Fred Matthews, NBC News just announced the other day that they are embedding reporters in what they call bellwether counties to study the effects of political and demographic changes. They chose Duval County as one of them.
Yeah, in fact, just yesterday, MSNBC, of course, did a profile through most of the day parts yesterday on Duval County. Both the Democratic and Republican chairpersons were interviewed, and all of them had to talk about the changing demographics of Duval County and the fact that, of course, we're purple. Even the Republican chairman had to admit that we're pretty much purple going blue. And they are having to deal with the change of demographics. Their focus in the coming years are going to be on these swing voters, these younger people from other areas coming to Jacksonville who are fairly well off economically and educationally and are not just tied into one party or the other. And that's what's going to make the changes here. Now, just to touch back on the issue with the JSO and the LGBTQ community, they've got to make some adjustments internally to this, because you can imagine what kind of language they're to use when they encounter persons of that lifestyle is still daunting to them. But we've got to always remember this. JSO's job is not community relations. It is law enforcement. It is investigate and arrest. That's their primary job. And we still as citizens want to still make them a part of the community awareness campaign, the human relations campaign. And that's a hard thing to turn around for many law enforcement personnel who are simply not trained on this in the academy.
Tom emails the show with a third of the city's budget at JSO. The trans liaison should not be a volunteer person. Thanks for that, Tom. It's 5492937. We want to talk about one other big story from the week before we move to our lightning round. A Jacksonville chemical factory that was previously sued over neighborhood complaints about horrible smells was cited this month for violating the city's odor laws. City officials emailed IFF Chemical Holdings a cease and desist order after inspectors went to 16 different households and verified odors they concluded began at the factory on Lane Avenue. A.G. Gankarski, there's a parody Twitter account called Murray Hill Chemical Smell that's been having a field day with this. You can joke about it if you don't live over there, right?
I do live over here.
Oh, there you go.
Windows open right now.
Oh, man.
It does not smell like chemicals. And, the citizens who pressed the city on this, who pressed levels of government on this, who made this happen, they did something heroic. And, given that the Lane Avenue area is sort of ground zero for all kinds of environmental contaminants, it is good to see a blow struck for nature for once.
What's it smell like over there? What's the smell?
Well, right now it smells normal, but often you get this chemical smell, and I'm in Avondale, so Murray Hill, places like that, it's even worse. But it's like a urinal mint in the sky. That was the chemical smell, and people just kept pressing and pressing, and it appears we're finally getting action.
Yeah, I mean, there's been, as I mentioned, there's been a lot of social media chatter about this. Catherine, 3 Murray Hill homeowners sued in January seeking to start a federal class action lawsuit. A judge dismissed that case. This has been a long fight.
Yeah, I mean, people fighting for quality of life in their neighborhood. Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't. What was a urine mint in the sky?
Urinal mint.
Urinal mint in the
Urinal.
Okay, God, yeah, that's descriptive.
Yes. You always get colorful descriptions on this program, right? But you know what, Catherine and Tim Gibbons, there's a long history with this. For people who are newer to town, as somebody mentioned, hundreds of people are moving here every day. But for people who've lived here a long time, they still have memories of paper mills that fouled up the city's atmosphere with horrible odors, and the fight it took to get rid of that.
Right, which was even worse than a urinal mint in the sky. And you have people divided over the aromas of the Maxwell House plant, which it baffles me. I think I love coffee. I think it smells wonderful.
I love
but there are
it,
people who
yeah.
apparently don't like that. But this is where the pushback on development, zoning laws, how where should factories and things be, is a perennial issue, because everybody likes having industry, but you have the byproducts of a fragrance manufacturer. Back years ago, I actually in Pennsylvania worked at a perfume company, and there are some weird odors that go into making fragrances, and they don't smell good.
Yeah, Fred Matthews too. This is also, I think, indicative of the fact that the city's built environment is changing in many ways, but in some older neighborhoods, you've got residential neighborhoods butting up against industrial ones still.
Well, it's the legacy of Jacksonville. Whenever you take that route from the stadium, going on Martin Luther King Drive, riding through the east side, and you make that turn at the end of it to head down to US 1, there's always that pungent odor of the water sewage plant that hits you as you make that turn, heading back north, heading back west on Martin Luther King Drive away from the stadium. And of course, they're still, for some reason, they've been able to corral the odor up there in the Brentwood area. There's a chemical factory that's been there for years down there off of Brentwood Road that's been hidden back there. They managed to corral their smell. But for some reason, these folks over here at IFF have not, on Lane Avenue, have not been able to get theirs together to corral this thing, although they've taken all of the steps that they say they have to get it done. And for it to travel as far away as to Avondale, for folks there to get it is really strange, because you don't get that same smell on the north side for the residents there within just a couple of miles. Mm-hmm. So it's really something that is just become endemic to Jacksonville. And I'm sad to say many of us have just learned to live with it, because that's how it is here in the River City.
Yep. Thanks for that. And before we let you all go, we want to round up some other headlines you might have missed from the week. It's time for our lightning round. I'll start. I've got a few. Boeing is adding 400 new jobs at Cecil Airport as they break ground on a new military aircraft facility. Also on Sunday, NASA and SpaceX launched the third rotation of astronauts to the International Space Station. They will continue our more than 20-year continuous human presence in space. Here's NASA astronaut Mike Finke talking about the Crew 3 mission.
The science program is going to be a pretty strong program. In fact, we astronauts like to say we work off the Earth for the Earth. We'll be looking at immunology so that we can make things better here for us.
Their research isn't directly related to COVID, but they are continuing immunology research. Here's another sad news to report. Friends report the great Betsy Lovett has died. Lovett was a renowned philanthropist and socialite and adventuress with a larger-than-life personality. She was a simply unforgettable local icon with an incredible old-style Southern accent. She was 91. In 2013, Betsy Levitt spoke to our Karen Bruni Mathis on this program about her commitment to philanthropy.
Well, first, I love to work in an organization and find out everything I can about it. I mean, work is just a little volunteer. So once I've done that, there's a great love there, and you know an awful lot about it. And so I feel like then it's my turn to give back for all I've received from them. I mean, the receiver receives, yes, but the giver has unlimited, continuous receiving. I mean, it uplifts your soul to know that you maybe somewhere have helped someone in some opportunity.
May her memory be a blessing. Okay, let's round our panel up. AG, what's on your mind?
I got two scoops for you. Lenny Curry's fundraising for Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker tonight. Location to be announced. Garrett Dennis is also filing to run in House District 13. Look for Seatus Jackson to run in District 9, where Councilman Dennis currently represents.
Tim Gibbons.
So we're looking a lot at the build-to-rent market, which is a fascinating little quirk of the residential real estate market, where people come in to build houses specifically to rent them out. And it's a growing thing, and it's kind of reshaping in some ways nationally how housing works.
How housing works.
Growing here locally.
Look for that. Catherine Lewin.
Yes, I have got a story coming out this weekend that I had a lot of fun reporting on about an upcoming garden and community market in Newtown, farmers market in Newtown that is being developed, and a little bit about food insecurity in the area.
Food insecurity, always important. Read that in the TU. Fred Matthews.
Well, a couple of things.
And we're up against a break.
I'm looking quickly at who's going to come out in the lead in the at-large city council race to replace Tommy Hazouri. I think it's 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans that are running. That's going to be an interesting race to watch because it's going to start somebody's political career.
Absolutely. Great insights. Fred, Catherine, Tim, and AG. Have a great Florida, Georgia weekend, and happy Halloween, guys.
Go Gators.
Happy Halloween.
We'll be right back.
What's Jacksonville Today?
Jacksonville Today is growing.
Chaotic.
It's creative. Jacksonville Today is hopeful.
Get the Jacksonville Today newsletter with the top local stories of the day, plus exclusive columns, a heads up on getting involved in local decision making, and the best of what's weird and wonderful in Northeast Florida. The Jacksonville Today newsletter. Sign up now at jaxtoday.org. That's jaxtoday.org.
Taxes, the environment, energy, education, healthcare, a state that's gaining nearly 1,000 new residents every day, and the ongoing quest for resources to meet that growing need. These are critical issues that affect everyone in Florida, and they're just some of the issues we follow every week on Capitol Report. It's your direct connection to what's going on in Tallahassee and what it means to you.
Tonight at 6:30 on WJCT News 89.9.
After months of wrangling, the president lays out a framework to get his Build Back Better plan passed. What's been left in his social safety net, and what did he have to throw out? Also, American parents look to the FDA for a decision about a vaccine for their kids, and a much-watched race in Virginia comes down to the wire. It's all on the Friday News Roundup, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. We are so excited to talk about something really new and cool happening here at WJCT. The launch of Jacksonville Today. Our new free daily newsletter gets you plugged into the 904. Newsletter editor Sydney Bowles is here with more. Hey, Sydney.
Good morning, Melissa.
And I am a subscriber. This comes into my inbox every morning. You're doing an amazing job rounding up news, culture, and more in this free daily newsletter. Tell us about Jax Today.
It would be my pleasure to tell you about Jax Today. The idea is people are busy. People are running around. You got kids, you got a busy job, but you still want to be a part of Jacksonville civic life. It's difficult to figure out what is going on with lots of different news sources, lots of different people telling you what's important and what you should be caring about. We try to make it easy. We try to slim out the noise, get you the most important news, what's going on at City Hall. We let you know who's running for a local office and what their policy positions are. We get you the news that you really need to understand without that extra noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, I was reading the profiles of local state senators Aaron Bean and Audrey Gibson. Most people don't know who their state representative or their state senator is or what they're up to, and they need to know. If you subscribe to Jax Today, you'll find out, but you'll find out a lot more.
Yeah, it's really true. We think that the idea behind the newsletter is if you've got, 2 minutes, we want to get you the top headline so you know what's most important in the city. If you've got 3 extra minutes, 5 extra minutes, we're going to take you a little deeper. We're going to give you that information to really be an engaged and knowledgeable citizen. And I think state, local elected officials are part of that. Like, these are people who really have a hand in shaping our quality of life and how our government runs. And so if we can just get you up to speed on what they're working on, I think that's a great step towards just being a little bit more of an active participant in our community.
That's right. Subscribe to jaxtoday.org. Just enter your email and hit subscribe, and you're ready to go. Sydney, we just had Catherine Lewin on. Sydney Bowles, going beyond the news of the day, what I love about Jax Today is we leverage the power of all of our partners like the Jackson Mag, the Times Union, and others. And we bring you so much in this email every day: news, arts and culture, photo essays, columns from A.G. Gankarski and Nikisha Williams, our new contributors. There's so much here.
Totally. There really is. I think one of the things that I'm sure we all are familiar with in this last while is that the news can feel overwhelming, and it can get you down if you're not careful. And so one of the things that I really care about when I'm writing this newsletter is that I want this to feel like a little bit of a message from a friend coming over, stopping by on your porch to tell you what's going on. And that friend is not just going to tell you the bummer stuff. We're going to bring a little bit of joy. Just in today's newsletter, I was so excited to share the top weekend happenings from our arts and culture editor, Matt Shaw. He really has his finger on the coolest and the best and the most interesting events that are happening in town, like this Moonchild performance at the Corner Gallery at the Jesse Ball DuPont Center tonight, actually. 6 o'clock, free to the public. All the details are in the newsletter. We want you to be a part of our community. And that includes participating in civic life, and it also includes enjoying all the wonderful things that our area has to offer.
I'm looking at today's newsletter delivered fresh and hot into my inbox, giving me the weather right off the top, a very quick glance at what I can expect weather-wise today, legislation looking at new city council district maps, the special election replacing the late Tommy Hazouri, what's going on with the weird chemical smell in Murray Hill.
Can't forget the weird smells. Yeah, we got to keep track of the smells.
You've got a Tallahassee check-in in the newsletter, which, as I mentioned, is so great because it gets people in an easy, quick way more caught up on our state government. All of the weekend events. There's so much here that you can browse through as you said, in under 5 minutes, and you just have a better understanding of what's going on in the 904. Particularly if you're new to town, I really recommend you subscribe to Jax Today because as we were talking about Sydney, hundreds of new people are moving here every day. And I can't tell you how often people say to me or email me and say, I've been listening to your show and to your station so that I can learn about this community and understand it better. This is another way people can do that.
Totally, totally. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have the Jackson Mag as one of our weekly contributors. These are guys who are experts in urban planning, urban development, what makes a livable and pleasant city. They've got exclusive content for us that you get in your inbox every Wednesday talking about how our city is growing because we want our city to grow well in a way that creates a pleasant, beautiful city. So these guys are really smart and they're sort of thinking about what Jacksonville is going to look like as we continue to welcome new people to our community.
Now, we just launched Jax Today this week. Already thousands of subscribers, right? But we want to go big. We want thousands more.
Yeah, yep. We are making it easy to subscribe. It is jaxtoday.org. It's one click, if that. We want this to be a community effort. We don't want to talk at you. We want to talk with you. So when you get this newsletter, we encourage you to respond to us, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, what you wish we were doing more of. We want this to be a sort of a part of your routine that feels happy and helpful. And so when you go to Jax Today and subscribe, because we want you to, let us know what we can do better. And we can't wait to have you as part of our crew.
And of course, let's also mention that next spring, jaxtoday.org will expand beyond a daily newsletter, which will continue to a daily digital newspaper, which we're excited about as we grow our nonprofit newsroom.
There are so many stories here in Jacksonville. This is a city that's brimming with human stories, with stories about politics and development and culture and class and all of these important issues in our society. The stories are there, and we're creating this place to really explore those in depth.
Sydney Bowles, editing the newsletter at jaxtoday.org. Subscribe today. It's free, jaxtoday.org. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I'm Melissa Ross. Thanks so much for listening. Join us again today at noon for the Florida Roundup, where we round up the biggest stories live across the state. That's today at noon. Have a great Friday and a happy Halloween, everyone.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.